Antarctica wasn't always a frozen wasteland. A long time ago, it was full of life, and 56 million years ago, something terrifying stalked its jungles. A giant, flesh-eating bird. It was around 6 feet tall and weighed as much as a lion. For millions of years, nothing could challenge it, so why did it disappear? And could there be even bigger predators still hidden beneath the ice? Paleontologists found 2 massive claw bones in Antarctica, sharp, curved, and powerful, belonging to this bird. They were dug up from the Epresian-aged rocks of Seymour Island, which means they're around 40 to 50 million years old. Their shape left no doubt. These were the so-called terror birds. Their scientific name is Forus raceti, some of the most fearsome predators to ever walk the earth. They were flightless and didn't even need wings. Instead, they could sprint at breakneck speeds, like ostriches from a nightmare. For millions of years, these birds ruled South America. But now, for the first time, their presence has been confirmed in Antarctica. No surprise here. Back then, South America and Antarctica were still connected, allowing animals to easily commute between continents. So these birds probably migrated south to adapt to life on Antarctica's prehistoric landmass. It didn't just survive here, it thrived. But at some point, this nightmare of an animal vanished. Why? Most likely because of the temperature changes. Antarctica was cooling, slowly turning into the frozen wasteland we know today. Its prey may have declined, leaving the predator without enough food. Eventually, it disappeared, leaving no descendants behind. Researchers hope that they'll find a complete skeleton eventually. They're also wondering where there might be even bigger species waiting to be discovered. Perhaps these birds evolved into a completely new Antarctic lineage. But for now, all we have are 2 giant, creepy claws. People often think that there are almost no animals or plants in Antarctica. But that's not true at all. Penguins waddle around, and forget the cute tiny ones. Antarctica used to have 6-foot-tall monsters. The emperor penguins are the largest penguin species alive today. They can dive over 1,800 feet deep and hold their breath for over 20 minutes. There were giant ancient penguins around 38 million years ago. They were the size of humans. Fossils show they had long, sharp beaks, making them terrifying hunters of fish and squid. The fish there are also absolutely fascinating. Forget giant squids. Colossal squids are nightmares even bigger. Some reach over 40 feet long with massive, super sharp beaks and eyes the size of dinner plates. Finally, orcas, the apex predators of the Antarctic Ocean. They hunt in packs, working together like a wolf pack of the sea to take down seals, fish, and even massive whales. There are even tiny plants like moss and algae, Antarctic hairgrass and pearlwort. They somehow survive against all odds. There are many other myths going on about Antarctica. For example, some people think that when icebergs break off from glaciers, they immediately start drifting straight into the open ocean until they melt. But the reality is way more chaotic. First, when an iceberg breaks off from a glacier or ice shelf, it has to deal with underwater obstacles. It can stay stuck on the seafloor for decades without moving. Then, they get caught in powerful whirlpools and spin in place for months. One iceberg, a 23A, spent nearly 40 years frozen in place before finally breaking free, only to get caught in a swirling ocean vortex for another 8 months. After that, their paths are influenced by ocean currents, tides, winds, and even underwater topography. They don't just float freely. Their movements are full of literal, unexpected twists. And speaking of glaciers, another strange rumor is that some humans can't travel more than 311 miles inland in Antarctica because of an impassable ice wall, freezing jet fuel, deadly winds, and no oxygen. But this is completely false. Antarctica has been explored by planes, vehicles, and even scientists on foot. There's an entire research station sitting at the South Pole. People live there all year long. The ice wall is real, a massive ice cliff rising above the ocean. But that isn't some secret barrier, it's an ice shelf. These are thick slabs of ice that form when glaciers slowly flow off the land and spread over the ocean. Almost 3/4 of Antarctica's coastline is made up of them, but they don't form some giant ring around the world. Antarctica is one of the most extreme places on Earth, but we've conquered its challenges, and we keep learning more about it every year. That's why every year, millions of dollars are poured into keeping research stations running, protecting wildlife, and making sure the people who live there have everything they need. But where does all this money go? Well, Antarctica stations are basically small cities. There's electricity, heating, water purification, food storage, and medical facilities. The biggest station, McMurdo, is basically a town with over 1,000 people in summer. It has everything from a fire station to a gym. The South Pole Station is super deep inland, so it's one of the hardest places to supply. Getting food and fuel there requires airplanes flying thousands of miles in extreme cold. But the internet loves a good mystery. When Google Maps revealed what looked like a massive doorway in Antarctica, conspiracy theorists went wild. People joked about everything from Bigfoot's vacation home to a secret base, or even a Star Trek spaceship hangar hidden in the ice. But there's a way simpler and less exciting explanation. It's actually a grounded iceberg, a chunk of ice that got stuck in shallow water and is now slowly melting. As ice moves across the landscape, it flows around bumps and obstacles, creating odd shapes. The process of melting, breaking apart, and refreezing can carve ice into unexpected forms. Antarctica also has incredibly strong downward-blowing winds that sculpt ice into dramatic formations over time. No secret doorway, unfortunately. And speaking of doors, for years, Ushuaia, Argentina, has been called the gateway to Antarctica, the last stop before the icy continent, the place where expeditions begin. But there's another option. Punta Arenas, Chile. Let's compare them. Ushuaia is closer to Antarctica. It's the top departure point for tourists going on cruises. But no regular flights to Antarctica. No major scientific bases operating from here. It's basically controlled by the military, which refuses to allow private flights, only commercially operated ships. Yes, Punta Arenas is further from Antarctica, but 22 countries and global organizations use it as their main base. There are regular flights to Antarctica happening there every year. Private airlines can actually operate here, making it the real air connection to Antarctica. Ushuaia may have the best location physically, but Punta Arenas actually runs the show. Argentina made a huge error in picking its Antarctic airbase. Instead of setting up a simple, accessible base at sea level, they built Marambio Base, very high, on rough terrain, completely impossible to reach by land. Everything has to be flown in by helicopter, making operations slow, expensive, and frustrating. For 50 years, Argentina stubbornly stuck to this bad decision, while Chile set up efficient, well-planned bases that the world now uses. If things don't change, Ushuaia will be nothing more than a tourist stop. But what's terrifying is that Antarctica seems to be returning to its past. It's supposed to be the coldest place on Earth, but something shocking happened just recently. For the first time in recorded history, temperatures in Antarctica broke 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This continent is buried under miles of ice. Usually, temperatures there can drop to minus 112 degrees. But in the winter of 2020, scientists recorded an insane 69 degrees on Seymour Island, hotter than many places in Europe at that time. Scientists believe there are several reasons for that. First, there are changes in the way heat moves around the planet's waters. Second, melting permafrost due to the planet warming. It looks like the climate is changing faster than expected. In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident. But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best-preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well-preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had diplomatic mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodragon boreas, which translates to frozen dragon of the north winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. The man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, 2 hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry-cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Andre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Andre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Andre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yuca, after the small village near where it was found. Yuca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yuca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yuca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gumburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, a businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on 2 ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists described the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights.
You're walking along the riverbank. It's quiet, save for the water's peaceful burbling. The hot Georgia sun beats down on your neck. That's when you notice something strange on the ground. Looks like a quarter-sized black coin with a weird pattern on it. You bend over for a closer look. Is it a coin? This thing looks like an ancient seal with a symbol carved in it. It's probably from some long-lost civilization. You could sell it and make a fortune. You crouch down on one knee to pick up your newfound treasure. As soon as your finger touches it, you pull your hand back as fear wells in your gut. It's hairy. Whatever, nothing a good cleaning won't fix. You go to pick it up again, digging your nails in the dirt around it to pull it out of the ground. That's when it moves. Your heart jumps in your throat. It's pounding so hard you can feel it in your head. The fear turns to horror when the coin wiggles its way out of the ground. It's no ancient treasure, it's a huge spider. A ravine trapdoor spider, to be precise. This hard, coin-looking growth on the back of its body serves as a shield. The eight-legged terrors burrow into the ground and plug it like a cork so hungry enemies can't get to them. Or, giant confused humans like you. The spider is venomous, but its bite isn't toxic to humans. Whew, lucky you. But I didn't say you wouldn't feel it. Best stay away from those sizable pincer-like fangs. Ow! Well, so much for your riches. Perhaps fortune awaits you in Mexico's Baja California peninsula. You're walking on dried-up ground when you notice a long white stripe up ahead. You get closer. Oh, looks like a super long worm, you think to yourself. But it doesn't move like any worm you've ever seen. That's when you see it has arms and a head. This pale creature with black beady eyes is a Mexican mole lizard. It lives in the ground where all its dinner of insects and termites hang out. It rarely comes out, so you're pretty lucky to have seen this bizarre reptile. Now you're in a rainforest in northeastern Australia. Ahead, half hidden among the trees, you notice something large and round. This mysterious figure lying on the ground is covered in black hair. At first, you think it's a bear curled up sleeping. But that wouldn't make any sense. There are no bears down under. You're getting closer when a twig snaps under your foot. The thing hears you and springs to its legs. It turns to you, and you now see this is a bizarre and beautiful bird. That black hair is actually a thick coat of long, fine feathers. This formidable fowl has a bright blue head with a large horn on top. Is that a trumpet? No. It stands on two powerful legs with a dagger-like claw on each foot that can be as long as your hand. Take away those feathers, and you might mistake this thing for a velociraptor. But it's actually a cassowary, the most dangerous bird in the world. It could jump straight over your head if it wanted to, definitely high enough to kick you in the chest, and its blows are strong enough to break bone, not to mention that claw that can cut through anything like butter. This bird was made to hunt and avoid being hunted. Don't even consider running away, not unless you too can sprint over 30 miles per hour. Diving into that lake over there won't save you either. This bird is an excellent swimmer. Best just to back away slowly and hope it doesn't come after you. Another creature that proves it's best to keep your hands to yourself is the panda ant. The naming is obvious. It's black and white and furry like the beloved bamboo-chewing bear. This furry little bugger lives in the forests of Chile. But don't go to pet this fluffy little ant. What you're looking at is no ant at all. It's a species of wasp. That black and white coloring serves one purpose – to warn others of this insect's powerful sting. And if that doesn't make you back away, the wasp will let out a squeaking sound. It sounds cute to us humans, but it means a painful sting is around the corner. These insects are loners. They don't live in colonies and don't have nests. They're also parasites. A female panda ant lays eggs next to the larvae of another insect. Then, the hatched babies use these larvae as food. Ew. Surely you've seen bugs that look like leaves and twigs. But what about a creature that looks like a beautiful orchid? You can find this fragrant flower in the forest or a green field among other plants. But make sure that's a flower you're leaning in toward to smell. If it's not, you risk being bitten by a praying mantis. The orchid mantis is nearly impossible to distinguish among the flowers. It has pink-white coloring with legs and claws that look identical to little petals. It uses its resemblance to the plant to hide from predators and hunt insects that love these flowers. A butterfly or a bee flies up to the flower when one of the petals starts moving. The unsuspecting meal might take it as simply the wind, but then the petal turns into a sharp claw that suddenly grabs the insect. Oh my, dinner is served. Now imagine you're in the jungles of Costa Rica. You notice a brown snake sitting on a tree branch in front of your face. The snake looks like it's about to strike. Well, you want to run away as far as possible, but notice that this snake is unusually short, and it doesn't lash out at you. You wait, but the snake keeps staring at you. It doesn't even hiss. Lucky for you, it'll never bite because it's not a snake, but a caterpillar. The hawk moth caterpillar can change the shape of its body to look like a menacing serpent. This easily scares away any hungry foes. The coloring and pattern on the skin imitates a snake's scales and eyes. This insect also knows how to move like a reptile. A master of disguise, this one. Let's get out of the hot jungle and head to Central Europe. You're in the middle of a sunny green meadow. Colorful flowers bloom around. Birds sing and bees buzz by. Among the bees, some are not what they seem. You'd hardly be able to distinguish the imposters. But if you look really closely, you'll see the golden bee fly moving through the air. It looks like a bumblebee, but it's the buzzer's biggest enemy. The golden bee fly sneaks into bee nests and lays eggs there. Its larvae hatch and feed on the bees and flower nectar. The yellow and black coloring allows the intruder to go undetected the whole time. The camouflage also keeps enemies away. Nothing would touch this fly if it thinks it'll get a bumblebee sting. The next spot on your journey is the rainforest in southern Thailand. Now, be extra careful and watch your step. Not because the next animal is poisonous or bites, but because you might actually step on it. The leaves from the trees have fallen and turned a gray-brown hue. Among these leaves, it's tough to distinguish the Malaysian horned leaf frog. Its body shape, coloring, and especially those pointy growths coming out above its eyes all allow this amphibian to hide perfectly among the fallen foliage. This frog can sit for hours in one place, waiting for its next meal to come close enough to… Now you're in a garden. You see a beautiful bright flower and a small bird hovering near it. The bird flaps its wings so quickly you can hardly see them. And that long needle-like beak makes you immediately assume you're looking at a hummingbird. But as soon as you get closer, you realize this is not a bird, but an insect. Fortunately, the hummingbird hawk moth isn't venomous and doesn't sting. It's just a lovely little creature that decorates the garden with its presence. Many people even grow plants rich in nectar to attract these moths. Hey, that's an idea. Feel that? The ground is shaking beneath your feet. Leaves are falling from trees. It feels as if a mini earthquake happens every few seconds. Bam! Bam! Something's coming right out of the woods towards you. There it is! The first thing you see is giant tusks and a long trunk. Then the creature's entire body emerges from the forest. This is the woolly mammoth. The species went extinct about 4,000 years ago, but now it's right in front of you. And it's not a dream. It might become possible in the nearest future. People are going to try to bring these animals back to life, and a group of scientists is already working on it. So, woolly mammoths appeared about 450,000 years ago in Siberia. Later on, they also settled in North America. Real estate was cheaper then. Then these animals took over Asia and even Europe. These guys were the tallest land animals during the last ice age. They were about 11.5 feet tall. That's as tall as a one-story cottage. That's also 1.5 feet taller than the height of the average modern elephant. But mammoths were much more massive. They weighed about 8 tons, compared to the 6 tons of an elephant. That's like 2 or even 3 big SUVs. Good thing they couldn't drive. Mammoths were so heavy because they had larger heads, as well as longer and more curved tusks. These animals lived in the cold tundra. That's why they needed a layer of fat that was at least as thick as a shoebox. But even that wasn't enough to withstand the cold. So mammoths had dense wool that grew to be as long as a cell phone charger cord. In the winter, the wool on the sides and belly of the mammoth formed something like a skirt, so the animal could lie in the snow and it didn't freeze. Mammoths spent most of their time looking for food, like me. To build up that thick layer of fat and keep their body temperature constant, they needed to eat about 400 pounds of food per day. That's the weight of 2 wild boars. But mammoths were herbivores, which means they ate grass and willow or pine branches. But after the Ice Age, the warming began. The tundra, where mammoths live, began to turn into swamps. The amount of food was decreasing. This caused a drop in the population of woolly mammoths. And now, scientists want to bring mammoths back to life. Using genetic engineering, they hope to recreate the mammoth using its DNA. Of course, this doesn't mean they will create the animal from scratch in a lab. First of all, they need a creature that resembles the woolly mammoth as much as possible. The answer is the Asian elephant. Both the mammoth and the elephant came from the same common ancestor millions of years ago. Their DNA is 99.6% the same. So, scientists only need to add several missing genes to the elephant DNA. This will provide them with fur, necessary fat, long tusks, a large domed head, and other distinctive mammoth features. And the best news is that we do have the mammoth DNA. These animals lived in colder parts of our planet with never-ending winter. This eternal refrigerator has preserved not only mammoth bones, but also their genetic material. Scientists have managed to identify about 60 specific genomes that can help recreate mammoths. The most difficult step is to bring this creature into the world. One option is to remove some DNA elements from an elephant's egg and replace them with mammoth DNA. But this would require a surrogate elephant mother. It would carry the baby for about 2 years, and then the first mammoth would be born. But scientists question this option. Creating a herd of mammoths would take decades and require too many surrogate mothers. Another option is to make an artificial womb. Nowadays, there are successful cases of creating a sac in which an embryo can safely develop. The main problem here is the sac itself. It has to be large and strong enough. It'll hold a developing mammoth baby for 2 years. In the end of this period, it'll have to withstand the weight of about 200 pounds. But it's also important to remember that elephants live in a matriarchal society, just like mammoths did. And when an elephant is born, the first thing it sees is its mother. Their connection remains strong for many years as the baby elephant grows. So many people say that such a way of growing a mammoth is highly unethical. But scientists continue their research. They insist that their goal is to improve the already existing genetic engineering technologies and apply them in the future. This way, we can save endangered animal species. But why should we bring woolly mammoths back to life in the first place? Some scientists believe that these animals played an important role in the planet's ecosystem. These days, the tundras of Siberia and North America are gradually warming up and releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. This contributes to the greenhouse effect, which warms up our planet even more. These tundras are now heavily overgrown with moths. But thousands of years ago, when woolly mammoths roamed these areas, tundras were more like pastures. Mammoths trampled moss and felled trees. They were some sort of ecosystem engineers. It's believed that the return of mammoths to these areas might help bring them back to their original state. Restored pastures will keep the soil from eroding. They may even be enough to decrease the production of harmful carbon dioxide. Recently, ecologists have brought many bison and other animal species to the vast expanses of Siberia for the same purpose, but some scientists believe that woolly mammoths would do a much better job. If this experiment turns out to be successful, people would have an opportunity to bring back to life a huge number of extinct animal species. Unfortunately, there's a limit to how long animal DNA can survive in fossils. If these fossils are hidden a few feet underground, DNA can last from 1,000 to 10,000 years. If the fossils, let's say, are in the ice in the Antarctic, DNA can remain intact for several 100,000 years. Unfortunately, it means we would never be able to recreate dinosaurs. They went extinct about 66 million years ago, and people just don't have any access to their DNA. But we could bring back some animals that disappeared not so long ago, like moa. It's a species of flightless birds. The largest of them was as tall as the woolly mammoth and weighed as much as a scooter. But the smallest species could be the size of a turkey. They lived in New Zealand and were isolated from the outside world for almost 80 million years, but they became extinct after the first people arrived there. Or stellar sea cow. This was the largest aquatic mammal after whales. These sea cows were as long as a limousine, and they weighed more than African elephants. Stellar sea cows had a very lazy lifestyle. They lived near the shore and ate algae, mostly seaweed. Scientists believe they didn't even know how to dive. Even though elephant birds were indeed birds, they couldn't fly. These creatures were twice as tall as an ostrich and weighed 10 times as much as the average person. They lived in Madagascar and, like ostriches, laid eggs. Although elephant birds became extinct almost 1,000 years ago, people still find their eggs. Scientists managed to get the DNA of these animals and analyze it. It turns out that the closest relative of the elephant bird is the kiwi. It's another kind of non-flying bird about the size of a domestic chicken. Pinta Island tortoises used to rest for 16 hours a day. They also drank a lot of water and could store it like camels. Each animal has its own role in the ecosystem, as well as in the food chain. The disappearance of one animal can cause huge problems for others. Such a chain reaction can wipe out an entire ecosystem. For example, dinosaurs didn't disappear instantly after the meteorite collided with Earth. The impact caused fires all over the planet. This decreased the amount of food for plant-eating dinosaurs. When they disappeared, meat-eating dinosaurs began to starve. And then all dinos gradually vanished off the face of the Earth. Many scientists think people do need genetic engineering technologies that can bring back extinct species. The pace of climate change on the planet is getting too fast for some animals to keep up with it and survive. Human intervention in this process could save many lives. This technology might also help recreate people if something happened and all life on Earth got wiped out. If we could preserve our DNA, our species could be brought back to life. By who? Consider Lake Enigma. What a fitting name. It's already strange enough because it's not even supposed to exist. But now, we stumbled upon actual life deep beneath it. And this just might help NASA in their search for life in outer space. The lake lies deep in the icy heart of Antarctica, so it's not really a water pool like we're used to, more like a lake-like block of ice, or so we thought. Just recently, Italian scientists discovered a secret that had been buried for ages, an actual body of water, and in this water, life is thriving. Various microorganisms, and even some weird little hunters. Which is super weird, since Enigma sits in a remote and harsh corner of our planet, the northern Victoria Land in Antarctica. The entire South Pole is cold, but in this place, temperatures can plummet to a horrifying minus 41 degrees Fahrenheit, though on average it's around 7. Chilly. Like we said, this lake shouldn't even be there at all. Antarctica is technically the largest desert on Earth, even though it's covered in snow, because it's super dry. There are 0 rains, truly little snowfall, and the sun barely evaporates anything. And even if there is some water, the insane winds make sure to dry everything out super quickly. Putting on our thinking caps, this lake should lose an unimaginable 7 million cubic feet of water every year. Yet, the water remains. Why? No one knows. Scientists say there could be something deep underground that refills it constantly. They just have no idea what that might be. Maybe deep underground rivers, melting ice, or something else entirely. But hence the name, the Enigma Lake. The block of ice we mentioned is permanent and super thick, at least 36 feet of it, and that's higher than a 3-story building. So researchers decided to check out if there's anything beneath it. They used a so-called ground-penetrating radar, a super smart echo detector for the ground. This radar sends invisible radio waves into the Earth. When they hit something underground like rocks, water, or anything else, they bounce back to the device. By measuring how long it takes for the signal to return and how strong they are, we can determine the distance and what exactly the radar hit. That's how animals like bats, whales, and dolphins can see underwater. And we humans stole this cool nature idea to research buried structures and hidden caves. Scientists used this device all over the Enigma surface. This way, they were able to create an entire map of this under-ice world beneath. The water itself wasn't surprising. It's the unique ecosystem in it that shocked them. Unfortunately, no secret monsters or extraterrestrial secrets this time. But there are microorganisms there that may not exist anywhere else on Earth. Somehow, these creatures have managed to survive in complete isolation and extreme cold. It's not that we don't know these microorganisms, we've met them before, just not exactly like this. There are a couple groups hanging out down there. The first one is Bacteroidota. They love breaking down complex molecules, especially in your stomach, and help digest tough plant fibers. They mostly hang out inside us, but in the outside world, we might occasionally find them in soils and oceans. Then Actinobacteriota, genius chemists among bacteria. They decompose organic materials and help the soil get healthier. They're also famous for producing antibiotics, so we owe a lot of our medicine to them. The third one is Pseudomonadota. These guys weren't a surprise. They're crazy adaptable. They can thrive pretty much anywhere, from soil to water to the human body. Some of them are good, helping plants grow and in nutrient cycles, but others can be opportunistic pathogens. Ooh, bad guys. But what is actually a surprise is that Lake Enigma has tons of passibacteria. They're ultra-small even for microorganisms and can barely do anything themselves. So they prefer to live in symbiosis or be little parasites, relying on their hosts for nutrients and other necessities. All these little chompers might be ancient. They could be remnants of a time before the lake froze over completely, which is hundreds of thousands of years ago. It's simply weird to encounter these bacteria in the Enigma lake, especially the little parasites. Passibacteria usually love low-oxygen environments, but this lake is very oxygen-rich, not even mentioning an almost 40 feet of ice above. So all this means that even though we know who these guys are, this specific species might be new to us. They could have evolved with some unique adaptations and abilities using the lake's unusual chemistry. They probably rely on a super simple and delicate food web. Some of the microorganisms produce energy from light, well, whatever light gets down there, or the lake's chemicals. The symbiosis guys most likely survive by living on or inside their neighbors. Yep, these microscopic creatures hunt each other. Nope, things can't be peaceful even in a place like that. If we find out what their secret to survival is, we might learn more about chemistry, medicine, and even extraterrestrial life. Because if life can endure such extreme conditions, then it can probably appear pretty much anywhere, including our closest neighbors, Europa or Enceladus, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They definitely hide oceans beneath their frozen surfaces, and now there's a very high chance there might be some life there. Antarctica must be the closest thing we have to extraterrestrial exploration before we actually land on other planets. It's full of hidden mysteries and surprising creatures. Even outside of Lake Enigma, the South Pole harbors life. Just take the McMurdo Dry Valleys, which are often referred to as Earthly Mars. These are among the most mysterious and extreme places on our planet. They're stretching across Victoria Land in Antarctica, and this is one of the driest places on Earth. Makes sense if you remember the name. Surprisingly, unlike other parts of the South Pole, this land is almost entirely devoid of snow and ice, just lots of super cold ground. There might even be some sand dunes nestled here and there between the rugged mountains. The ground is mostly covered in loose gravel, scattered with ancient rocks made of granite, and something interesting called gneiss, just spelled differently. It's the type of rock that's been through a lot, literally. It's usually born when granite and sedimentary rocks have to endure insane pressure or horrifying heat for a while, a process called metamorphism. These conditions are so intense that they literally rearrange the minerals into layers. That's why gneiss has such beautiful foliated looks. It's the planet's version of baking a layered cake. It's amazing because this place is almost exactly the way it was millions of years ago. These valleys are frozen in time, and they give us a little glimpse into Earth's distant past. And that includes life. Once again, local winds are absolutely terrifying gusts of cold air racing downhill, and they evaporate snow faster than it can even melt. So, logically, you shouldn't find much water here, not even mentioning life. But somehow, you can still stumble across frozen lakes and saline ponds in the dry valleys. And local life stretches all reason and our understanding of biology. It exists inside the rocks themselves. Microorganisms are hidden in slightly moist cracks and crevices. Deep inside, there's endolithic bacteria. These guys are super chill. Instead of moving around like other microorganisms, they always stay put inside their little rocky homes. How do they survive? Through photosynthesis. Just like plants, they take teeny tiny parts of light that gets in crevices and acts like little solar panels, getting energy from the sun. Meanwhile, in another place, beneath the Taylor Glacier, there's bacteria that literally doesn't eat anything. Not comfort, not sunlight, not even oxygen. These guys rely on a diet of dusty rocks and sulfur to fuel their weird metabolisms. By breaking down sulfur and iron, they get energy to sustain themselves. This way, they easily survive in deep seas at sub-freezing temperatures, completely cut off from sunlight, oxygen, and the world itself. This place is fascinating for both its life and the lack of it. In some parts of the valleys, like University Valley, yes, that's what it's called, the permafrost is so harsh that no microbes were found at all. This might be one of the only places on Earth where life appears to be completely absent, a quite scary idea. Anyway, now scientists are thinking about learning more about Lake Enigma and drilling this Mars-like environment, exactly for that reason, to see how we could get samples from Mars in the future. Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently in danger. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are two species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Every species on Earth, you, me, and that nasty neighbor of yours, is destined to go extinct someday. Just like what happened to the woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Stats aren't bright. Scientists say that 99% of all animals that ever lived are now extinct. Hey, what's that look on your face? Going extinct is not the end of the story. Now listen up. Mammoths might make the greatest comeback ever and even be the key to saving humanity. Nope, they won't give away free money so that we don't have to work anymore, but they can sorta help the weather situation on our planet. In the Arctic tundra, there's this ground called permafrost. It's like soil in the form of ice. Soil turns permafrost when it stays super cold for 2 years straight. But now, permafrost is actively thawing out, and it's bad news for, well, everyone. Because while thawing, it releases a lot of carbon into the air. But what if we had large animals like mammoths there today? They would churn up the soil. The ground would freeze more deeply in winter. And then, in summer, a layer of grass would help keep the ground cool and prevent the permafrost from melting. Some scientists think that's a great solution. So now there's a company in the US that's trying to bring mammoths back to life. Okay, you got me. Not actual mammoths, but a sort of hybrid between an elephant and 1% mammoth DNA. It would be a northern elephant. Getting mammoth DNA is easier than you might think. They actually only went extinct about 10 to 14,000 years ago. Scientists are hoping to have their first elephant-mammoth hybrid by 2027. Let's hope it doesn't turn into a real-life Jurassic Park. Ah, Australia. A nightmarish place, and a home to the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But here, the sad fate befell the Tasmanian tiger, also known as thylacine. Don't mix it up with the Tasmanian devil. That one is living and thriving. Nope, the thylacine was a marsupial predator that used to chill in Australia, South Tasmania, and New Guinea. It was a nocturnal who preyed on other marsupials, like kangaroos. In the 30s, the farmers suddenly claimed that thylacines were eating their livestock. Looking back at it now, that was probably an exaggeration. But humans started to hunt poor thylacines until they were all gone. And then it turned out that hunting away the important predator isn't the brightest idea. Who would have thought? You see, thylacines kept things in check by eating bad animals. So once they disappeared, the Australian wildlife was basically doomed. 35% of total mammal extinctions on Earth happened here. That's an awful world record. I know it sounds gloomy, but hey, maybe we can fix this. Remember that company we mentioned? It wants to bring back the thylacine too. Luckily, many thylacine embryos are still preserved in jars, like some creepy pickles. If we bring them back to Tasmania, this could help revive the entire ecosystem. Would you be happy to see them back in the wild? Me too. And I would also be happy to see you hitting those like and subscribe buttons so you can keep up with amazing facts all year round. We also have some huge dreams about tiny creatures. Take a trip to Mount Hotham Ski Resort in Victoria, Australia, and here you can find the mountain pygmy possum, a tiny bundle of cuteness. These guys are super rare. We even thought that they were extinct. All we had was their fossils. But then, some skiers spotted a possum in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. Imagine suddenly making a great discovery while chilling on vacation. These little possums can spend 7 months of the year sleeping under the snow. They wake up occasionally to eat some stored food, and then they wake up in the spring to eat even more, find a mate, and go back to sleep again. What a relatable fella. Since they've made it into this video, you can guess they're pretty endangered. There are less than 2,000 left in the wild, all because their current homes don't fit them that well. But hooray, we can help them too. You see, their ancestors lived in lowland forests about 20 million years ago. So maybe mountain possums could live better if we moved them there? Of course, we can't just take them to the woods and expect them to survive. Instead, scientists want to slowly release possums into the forest and check up on how they get on with it. Let's hope these cute creatures will adapt to woodland life. The southern gastric brooding frog, also called the platypus frog, was quite a unique creature. It was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia. Back then, this fella shocked the scientists with its super weird birthing practices. Check this out. The mother frog swallows her eggs, turning her stomach into the womb. Then she doesn't eat at all for 6 weeks straight. I could never. Meanwhile, the tadpoles hatch in her stomach, start to grow, and eventually get so big that the mom literally has to breathe through her skin. And then she literally spews out her offspring left and right. Bleh. But this insane process is a great evolutionary achievement, which is why it drew everyone's attention. But the wonder didn't last long. By the mid-80s, all known species of these frogs vanished from their natural habitats. Why? We have no idea. There are many theories, but almost no evidence to back them up. In any case, over the years, these guys officially became extinct. But it all changed in 2013. Scientists started a groundbreaking project named the Lazarus Project. Now they want to resurrect these frogs to learn cool cloning techniques from them. Are you guys ready to copy their genetic preservation method? Yeah, me neither. But let's dive deeper. Literally go in the water. Meet the coelacanth. This creature lived in the oceans back when the dinosaurs roamed our planet, and didn't even notice the asteroids. These guys are the Methuselahs of the sea. They can live up to 100 years, and they don't even start thinking about leaving offspring until they're around 55. At least they've got plenty of time to live for themselves. We actually thought this creature had gone extinct about 65 million years ago. But then, the first Latimeria specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Now they're known as living fossils. And these fish are enormous. They weigh around 200 pounds. They're also super stylish, with those lobe-fished paddles that make them look like disco balls. Oh, and they're great aerialists. Thanks to those versatile fins, they can even do headstands and swim belly up. The coelacanth is also a bit of a homebody. It's not very energetic, and likes to live in underwater caves during the day, only coming out at night to snack on smaller fish and squid. Another animal who's literally me. Now we're trying our best to preserve this species, and I won't be surprised if it outlives us all. And finally, let's talk about the largest and most awkwardly looking flightless bird from New Zealand, the South Island takahe. The tale of the takahe started way back in the Middle Ages. Humans accidentally hunted them all away, and by the late 19th century, it seemed there were none of them left. But then, they were rediscovered in New Zealand in 1948. Poor guys did all they could to hide from us in the mountains, but we still got them. But it's different now. Since then, we've been trying our best to save them from extinction. There's a takahe recovery program going on, and it shows great results. They managed to greatly boost the number of birds in the wild. As of 2023, the takahe population has grown to around 500 birds. They're now considered nationally vulnerable, not nationally critical. It's a little progress, but progress nonetheless. Let's keep it up.
It looks idyllic, a vast green field with granite cliffs in the background and a river flowing through the landscape. You can see birds flying and people having a picnic. But then, a scream cuts through the laughter. No, you're not watching some horror movie. This is what happened to a visitor who found a severed hand in Yosemite National Park. Running into crime scenes in national parks is unfortunately more common than you think. Yosemite, for example, holds a record of police investigations, making it the second most dangerous park in the U.S. Not only that, but this is also a pretty huge place, bigger than some countries like Samoa or Luxembourg. You can see why this is an ideal place for you to become a missing person photo on a milk carton. Out of everyone who went missing in Yosemite, Patricia Marie Hicks' case is, I think, the most disturbing one. Remember the hand I mentioned? Well, it was found in 1983 on Summit Meadow by a visitor. The police tried to find more clues about this crime evidence, but the case eventually went cold. In 1988, a skull was discovered, but again, the case got stuck. It was only in 2021, with the help of a genetic genealogy test, that the police finally confirmed this was indeed the remains of Patricia, a woman who had been missing since 1982. However, not every missing person leaves a trace. This is the case of Sandra Jensen Hughes, last seen in July 2020. Sandra was camping alone in the nearby Sierra National Forest when she crashed her vehicle. Passers-by offered help, but for some uncanny reason, she refused it. This was the last time anyone ever saw her. All her stuff was still at her campsite, except for her sleeping bag, found 2.5 miles north of where she crashed her car. Sandra is not the only person still being searched by the police. In fact, there are more than 30 cold cases of missing people in Yosemite alone, including a guy who separated from his group in 2011 at the top of Upper Yosemite Falls, a man who has been missing since 1972, and even a guy who vanished 116 years ago. In most cases, people disappear in circumstances less grim than the one involving Patricia Hicks, for example, but it doesn't make these cases less tragic. So what are the reasons why people go missing? First things first, Yosemite Park is the home to 9 waterfalls, including the biggest one in North America, standing at nearly 2,500 feet. Many people like to visit it to go fishing, kayaking, and hiking. However, the water stream velocity increases near waterfalls, and falling from a waterfall is not a Woody Woodpecker experience. You'll find yourself stuck in a powerful whirlpool or have an unpleasant meeting with rocks, most possibly a smashing one. Another natural reason may be that Central California is prone to extreme storms, which can make the river rise suddenly and even form waterspouts. One more famous attraction in Yosemite National Park are the mountains. There are more than 10 popular sites with heights that range from 4,000 feet to 10,850 feet. Some mountains are so tall, climbers must spend the night in a makeshift camp halfway up the granite wall. It is quite popular, And even though you need a special permit for these types of rock climbing, you don't need to be a pro to climb smaller mountains. This explains why so many people get hurt falling from tall places. Besides, rock climbing causes permanent damage to the mountains, and the valley is prone to rock falls. Now, if you're like me and are terrified of climbing, the second best option is hiking, which just so happens to be the #1 reason people fall in the first place. The hikes in Yosemite are some of the hardest hikes in California, and you can bet even an experienced hiker can make a mistake and get lost. In 2024, for example, the body of a former park ranger and pro hiker, Kirk S. Thomas Olson, was found after he tried to venture along an especially complicated trail. 20-year-old Grace Roloff also lost her life in 2024 after slipping and falling while descending Half Dome's climbing cables during a sudden thunderstorm. And finally, animals. About 300 distinct species live in Yosemite. And guess what? Wild animals are not your pets. If you're unlucky, you might wander into a mountain lion den, which is already bad enough, given that these animals are the type that silently stalk their prey. Not a fun way to go. But the ones you really should be afraid of are black bears. They usually only eat tall grass and berries, but they will break into your car, tent, or lodge if they smell food. And unlike mountain lions, black bears are not afraid of humans. Now, the National Park Service makes it clear that rescue is not a certainty and that you must be prepared to get yourself out of whatever trouble you got yourself into. But how do I do that, you might ask? Well, here are some pro tips to avoid getting caught in a tight spot. First, try not to do solo trips. If you really want to have a me time, then let others know about your plans, like all of them. Most of those people went missing because their families didn't know about their plans. Secondly, always pack an emergency supply bag with stuff like a flashlight, compass, knife, multi-tool, paracord, and a thermal blanket. Remember, you are not Bear Grylls, and real life is not a fun episode of Naked and Afraid. Although, if not careful, you might just end up like that. Heat is also a big problem in Yosemite, so stay hydrated and go for a hike during cooler parts of the day. Seriously, drink water. The lack of water and food can lead to disorientation, a fatal symptom if you are literally in the middle of nowhere. But I'm visiting Yosemite during the winter. Well, one more reason to keep your water and food levels up, because you burn more calories when hiking in the snow. Survival expert Jesse Krebs also recommends always bringing a whistle with you if you need to call for help, especially if you haven't planned your trip well, which is a huge mistake. Wilderness is not a place for much improv, I'm afraid. Now, when it comes to hikes, some are so steep they require a cable route to help hikers. If the cables are down for some reason, avoid these areas. And do not rely on the internet or phone services to communicate with others if you find yourself in danger, because the connection in parks is usually not particularly good. Oh, and don't feed or engage with wildlife. I know bears are friendly shaped, but unfortunately, they are not your friends. Learn how to safely store your food so wild animals don't bother your camp, and do not feed them. Fail to comply, and the park might give you a $5,000 fine. Also, be careful of where and how you drive. Car crashes are the second most common reason why people need medical assistance in national parks. So use tire chains during icy periods, wear your seatbelts, and don't go driving around like you're Dominic Toretto. And just in case I didn't stress this enough, watch out for the weather. Not just because water streams are dangerous, but also because lightning is a common occurrence in Yosemite. A lightning bolt may not strike you, but it may strike a tree, causing a fire or making it fall. A thunderstorm may trigger rock slides or make a climb slippery, like it happened to Grace Roloff. And finally, be careful with strangers, okay? Remember, stranger equals danger, etc. Well, that surely was fun, light, and not terrifying at all, right? Well, hopefully now you'll be wary of strangers, nature, and everything in between. Stay safe, be smart about it, and enjoy the park.
A man went for a walk not far from Buenos Aires in Argentina. and found something that looked like a dinosaur egg lying in the mud. When he shared his find with his family, everyone thought it was a joke, but it was actually very real. Except it wasn't a dinosaur egg, but a glyptodont shell. These guys went extinct thousands of years ago. Some of them grew up to be the size of a small car. The Paleo-Indians, who were the ancestors of Native Americans, must have had a fun time living alongside those beasts. People keep finding similar black scaly shells, which are fossils of glyptodonts in the Americas. These creatures thrived in South America for tens of millions of years and also spread up north. They had thick armor, called a carapace, and tough, grooved teeth for eating grass. They weren't always giant, but it looks like a colder climate before the Ice Age, with open woodlands and plenty of grass, helped them evolve. It's pretty hard to hide when you're huge, so they may have developed their fused armor to protect themselves. One of the most famous types had a long tail with spikes that it used to fight other glyptodonts for territory or mates. Although they look similar, the ancient glyptodonts were really different from today's armadillos. Glyptodonts had a hard, heavy armor made of fused plates, and today's armadillos have flexible armor and can roll up into a ball to protect their soft tummies. Plus, glyptodonts ate grass using their grooved teeth, and armadillos prefer insects for lunch. But despite all the differences, recent studies of their DNA showed that glyptodonts actually belonged to the armadillo family. If you think the glyptodont was scary, just wait till you meet the giant short-faced bear. This bad guy grew to almost twice the height of Michael Jordan when it stood on its hind legs. It also weighed over 1,500 pounds, and it was able to run at the speed of over 40 miles per hour. This bear preferred meat to all other foods. Even its skull and teeth were designed for slicing through meat, and it had forward-facing eyes that gave it sharp vision. Its strong jaws and large muscles helped it crush bones to get to the nutritious marrow inside. The giant short-faced bear lived in places like Minnesota and west of the Mississippi River, all the way up to Alaska. It went after or scavenged big animals like bison, musk oxen, deer, and even ground sloths. But it eventually went extinct because its prey didn't survive the Ice Age. Today, the only living relative of the short-faced bears is the spectacled bear from South America. This guy is much smaller, about the size of a black bear, and it eats both plants and meat. Game of Thrones fans, the next one is for you. The orphaned wolf cubs adopted by the Stark family in the epic series were inspired by dire wolves. Their name translates from Latin as terrible wolf. These great uncles of modern dogs were almost 5 feet from head to tail and weighed around 150 to 200 pounds. The oldest record of the dire wolf is from 250,000 years ago. They adapted well to different conditions and lived pretty much all over North America, from as far north as Alaska to down into southern Mexico. They went extinct around 10,000 years ago, soon after the last Ice Age. They most likely just lost their source of food. The closest we have to dire wolves now is the gray wolf, but don't get too upset. Scientists think they could be able to bring the dire wolf back to life. They can combine intact straps of their DNA, recovered from the museum specimens and the genome of modern dogs. One animal you definitely wouldn't want to be on the de-extinction program is the saber-toothed cat. This bad guy lived in prehistoric North America and parts of South America. And nope, it's not related to modern tigers or other cats. It just went extinct. It had the title of the most fearsome Ice Age predator for a long time, until scientists found out at least one species of it was more like a kitty cat. Smilodon, by the way, Diego from Ice Age was one of those. Could only chomp down with 1/3 of the force of modern lions, but it could open its mouth at a 120 degrees angle, and it could wrestle even large prey to the ground with its powerful body, with disproportionately thick front legs and strong neck. The kitty was probably just too afraid to use its long and narrow teeth that could break easily. And one more detail. It had to have lips that could stretch well for the jaws to open wide, so it most likely drooled like a St. Bernard. Well, at least their teeth grew twice as fast as those of modern lions, and fully formed by the age of 3. The giant beavers, called castoroids, must have grown at the same rate, or so to get as big as a couch. They were about 8 feet long and weighed 200 pounds, which is as heavy as a large refrigerator. They had huge 6-inch long front teeth for gnawing, a narrow tail, and long, shaggy fur. This giant creature lived alongside mammoths and saber-toothed tigers in the woodlands of North America. Like today's beavers, the giant beaver probably spent a lot of time in the water since it was too heavy to move quickly on land. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure if giant beavers built equally giant dams. Even if they did, none of those structures survived over time. Some people think a giant beaver built a 4-foot-tall dam in Ohio, but it's just a guess. Eventually, the giant beaver disappeared, just like other big animals from the last ice age. Early human settlers in North America may have sped up its extinction, as they probably liked its thick fur and meat. By the Ice Age, mastodons, some remote offsprings of the early elephants from Africa, crossed a land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska and made it to North America. Mastodons, like woolly mammoths, had thick, shaggy fur that helped them keep warm in the cold climate of the Ice Age. But unlike the mammoths, who mostly grazed, mastodons were mostly browsers. They like to eat leaves from shrubs and the lower branches of trees. Scientists often find woolly mammoth fossils together, which means they probably lived in groups, like family herds. Mastodon fossils are usually lying alone. This means they may have preferred living on their own and only came together to mate or for a short time with their young. Sadly, both mastodons and woolly mammoths went extinct around 11,000 years ago, not long after the Ice Age. Scientists think this may have happened because of changes in weather patterns, fewer food sources, and possibly early humans. They figured out that one mastodon could feed a tribe for a week and dress them for years. You can mostly find camels in deserts in places like North Africa and the Middle East now. But scientists believe they actually came from North America, especially the lands west of the Mississippi River. Fossils show that camels appeared on Earth about 44 million years ago. In 2015, a team of scientists from the University of Louisiana discovered the bones of a giant ancient camel in Oregon. This camel was between 12 and 14 feet tall, like a modern giraffe. It lived around 7 million years ago and had a long neck to help it reach high plants. About 6 million years ago, some early camels crossed into Asia over the Bering Strait land bridge. Once they arrived in Asia, these camels split into 2 types we know today: the Bactrian camel with 2 humps and the dromedary camel with 1 hump. You won't find wild camels in North America anymore, but some of their relatives, such as llamas, alpacas, and guanacos, still live in South America.